Well, over there's no straight. It's interesting to see it.
Okay.
Evolve.
So I guess we will call the pre-meeting to order for August 23rd, 2021. We do have a full board here, although we are going to be short. Loretta can't attend. So on one of the applications, New Way Car Wash site plan, I will have to recuse myself for AE's involvement in site plan, which I've done in past months. But that'll leave us with a 4-member board for that application. In that regard, I was also going to check with the board whether or not we may consider tabled item court 2021-13 first tonight. I think it is a tabled item from a past meeting. We do have the new information to consider that. That would also allow us to do it in order for recusal purposes. Anybody have any questions on that? Well, get to go in order instead of going with one, recusing for one.
Yeah.
Coming back in for yep. So I guess we might as well start right off with that item, item 2021-13. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to look at their packets. And, Ethan, I don't know if you want to give us a little summary on that.
Yeah, the applicant is here today and will speak later on. Provided a lot of new additional information to try to address some of the board comments that you had. So the images of the side with the small portion most affected, they took a picture of the siding, see how it's staying proud of the trim. They also provided some architectural images of where the existing features that won't be impacted by his proposed project. And then we were able to go and get updated determination from SHPO, and that was attached in your packets. And so I don't know if you want to go through that whole thing, but essentially the main component is SHPO saying, as we reviewed your recent submission dated August 6, 2021 for this project, the submission includes documentation explaining the applicant's continued request to install vinyl siding on the building. While we understand the challenges to this roof configuration, especially during times of unprecedented rain events, covering the entire building with vinyl siding does not meet preservation standards. That's the main gist of what SHPO's determination is. In regards to this, they had recommended the potential of using, I think, fiber cement as an alternative. I was looking that up a little bit, and Jim, you might be able to speak a little bit more to that, or anyone with more experience in the construction trade. But it seems that there's some pros and cons to using it. It can be a little more expensive, can last a little longer, but sometimes it's a little more durable. In some cases, it's not. So it's that's just a recommendation that SHPO has in front, and for you guys to consider. So other than that, I don't really think there's, for the staff, on the staff side, there isn't really too many comments other than that. Is you've all been through plenty of historic site reviews. The guidance, and now you have the most updated SHPO response in regards to the applicant's updated information.
Jim, have you received the SHPO letter? Have you seen it?
Yes.
Okay.
One day.
August 19th.
So ultimately, the SHPO's letter came in end of last week, and
Late, on Friday.
pretty limited time for applicants or anybody to respond to it. It was disregarded.
One of the other parts that the SHPO letter did talk about is, maybe potentially looking at the siding for that one specific section. to address that concern. So.
Got that.
So what I wasn't clear on was they say that that may be a good potential for alternative siding materials. I'm assuming they're still referring to the cement board siding
Yes.
material.
Yeah, in this case, they're talking about that fiber cement siding as an alternative siding.
Okay. Okay. I mean, once again, the applicant hasn't had the chance though to really be able to vet this or.
Exactly, and I'm sure tonight the applicant will be able to speak to maybe some of these concerns and then present his side of, this. And at the end of the day, the board will, I mean, if you determine to make the determination tonight, or if you'd rather, if the applicant wants more time to try to come to get some more information, that'll be a discussion you have later, but.
Okay. Anybody on the board have any questions? Comments?
I think it'd be a good idea to listen to the applicant's presentation before we have a discussion, because he may modify.
Okay.
That's the fair thing.
Given how new that letter is.
Yeah,
I
and
would
it's
think
addressed
that-
to Shalice, so I didn't know
Yeah.
if he had a copy of it.
Okay. Well, then,
Sorry, I can't hear you.
why don't we, I guess, move on to application 2021-15. It's 144 US Oval, and that's a historic site review.
Yeah, so that's at 144 US Oval. That's pretty hard to pick out because a lot of the buildings look pretty similar out there. But it is in the, a very similar project to what the board has looked at in 2019. It's replacing vinyl windows with vinyl windows and replacing hardwood trim with hardwood trim. They're talking about using colors that are approved by their HOA. One of the things that may be a little unique about this circumstance is during staff review of this, US Oval has the agreement with the Park SHPO agreement. There's also a list of approved activities that are excluded from SHPO review. And it's part of it's a mouthful, so I'm going to read it off, but the Park SHPO programmatic agreement list of categorical exclusions for historic properties at the former Plattsburgh Air Force Base in New York. It gives a list at some point. If the board like, we have it down here, so Shalice could bring it up to look at. But essentially lists various things that doesn't require SHPO discussion. In this case, I had reached out. Our determination was because it's vinyl with vinyl. In this case, and the hardwood trim, it would meet that excluded category. I did email SHPO, and while I did not get an official letter, I do have an email saying that is the correct interpretation. We do have that email. It wasn't part of the packet, but once again, Shalice will have that and be able to present that as well. So in this case, it's pretty straightforward. It's identical to a project approved by the board 2 years ago. Same type of windows, same structure building. And that one, I believe, was at 148 US Ave, US Oval. Actually, if I'm missing anything about that, let me know.
The only thing would be that arch window if you want to cover that.
Oh, yes, Shalice did mention there's one of the unique architectural features on the building is an arch window, and then making sure that the window doesn't necessarily cover all of it. But once again, that'll be a discussion with the applicant and then the board.
So I noted that in your review, is the arch window actually part of the window?
So right now, for this application, yes, the window right now is an arched window.
It is.
The comment came up because for the Pens and Georgie one that we had 2 years ago, they had a wood filler in that archway, and that was a comment.
I was gonna say, some of those buildings that had window replacements in the past, they infilled those with a wood filler. keep the windows square. This is one that did not.
I tried to get a picture of that the other day, but it's directly with the sun, so it just whitewashes all the photos. And we try to get that one side window. But yes, right now there's a puddle window in the arch.
As with staff comments, that's pretty much it. You know, you have that's our review.
Anybody have any questions in the information presented to them at the moment? No?
It's straightforward.
Okay. If not, we'll move on to item planning board application 2021-12, which is no car wash site plan. As I pointed out earlier, be recusing myself from that. With the application. Eric will be.
Yeah, so for this, the New Way Car Wash, they're coming back to you guys. You already saw them before. There's been some changes after discussions and their work through the zoning board. So in the back, they're now proposing a 10-foot high solid vinyl fence to help with noise mitigation. The actual building itself has now shrunk from 3,600 feet to the 3,000 feet. So 3,000 square feet. So that also allows the parking that they are providing to meet the zoning requirements as well. So that's one less variance they did not need. They also, due to the building scope changes, they increased their open space surface area. They got rid of the second queue lane while still maintaining the 15 waiting spots needed. They provided a noise analysis and a stormwater analysis in support of their projects. They also reduced their proposed driveway, which when pointed out by the zoning board would have required a slight variance because it was off by 5 inches. They fixed that, so that's one less thing I have to worry about. And the 3 variances they needed for special use permits being close to the residential neighborhoods, all those, and the side yard setbacks were all approved by the zoning board. And then also on top of that, it was referred to the county planning board, which voted to approve. And their only comments really were to look out the sidewalk connected to the rest of the sidewalk on, that's that road, as well as any snow storage issues. Ultimately, staff wise, when we looked at that, that section of Route 3, it's not people still walk, they walk and they go up there. And at the end of the day, would be great to have one perfect sidewalk that connects everything. Sure. But, getting pieces and slowly building that way makes sense as well. It's to help move forward. So that's why we didn't have the staff any specific comments about, addressing the sidewalk plan for this project. And other than that, one last 2 comments that one real comment that other staff had was Department of Public Works. They wanted, after reviewing their stormwater analysis, they recommended that the planning board should request that the applicant includes an oil water separator as well as the grit separator. I spoke with one of the individuals who would be from AEDA who's presented the project before, Mike Kuhn, and I was asking him some questions about that because for my own enlightenment. He talked about some conversations they've had with the Department of Public Works about how the grit system that they have can also, in turn with some of the internal plumbing, address some of that oil water separation. So there's the question of if you need further information, there's third-party review, or if it's possible, if you choose to move forward and potentially approve the project as a condition, maybe recommending that they get DPW sign off that whatever they put in is appropriate to address those concerns. But that's, as staff comments, that's all we have. So I don't know if there's any questions regarding this one.
I have one. Do you have an illustration that shows the existing sidewalks on any adjacent property or throughout that corridor?
We'll be able to probably just go on Google Maps during the,
Okay.
and then.
There are, Aaron's has some
Yeah.
in front of theirs that are old and existing, but there aren't any. That's an issue I brought up to my council member for our area. And there aren't any, because I used to walk to work over at Oxford Plaza from Logan Avenue. And there'd be points where you had to walk in the street. But their answer to me when I asked about that was, well, back in the 70s, when we expanded the roads, we got rid of the sidewalks. That was their answer.
Yeah, well,
So
there have been other site developments like Walgreens,
they
Burger
don't shovel
King.
their sidewalks, and neither does
Whether
Aaron's.
they maintain them, that's
That's
not up to us. What
correct.
we're looking at is consistency and, you
Yeah,
know, that pedestrian pathway. I think
right.
that should be
Just
our
exist.
primary objective.
Yeah. But
Um,
there are none. I mean, Aaron's has something probably left over from the 70s from the looks of it. They don't shovel it.
Yeah, I think the intent of the planning board, and I don't have enough history on the planning board to comment to that, but you would see up and down that the section within the city of the Route 3 corridor, isolated properties, and that was done as they developed each of these properties.
Right.
So
I get it.
even
But-
the, what's
But
the
the
drugstore, used to be Eckerd's. They developed that site. It was a corner lot with the intent
Yeah.
that future development of other sites would interconnect. Hey, does anybody have any history? Kurt, were you part of any of those?
No, I don't think so.
Okay,
It looks like, yeah, I mean, the sidewalks are very spotty.
yeah. And that's why their sidewalks where they're at, so that eventually they would be
Connect.
interconnected. Do we have that? Is there language within the city's comprehensive plan that talks about sidewalks on Route 3?
On Route 3 specifically, I don't
Yeah.
believe so. We could try to reference that when I know we probably might have a little time before the meeting, but
Yeah,
nothing specific usually about on the Route 3 corridor, but that's something that we could check.
will Mike be here? Do we know?
I believe so.
He responded that he will be coming.
And I understand that by adding the sidewalk to be consistent with the other sidewalk locations, not by adjacent properties, that it may interrupt one of the parking or stacking spaces. But I think that's food for thought. If, you know, if we're gonna continue with the, you know, with the plan of trying to have interconnecting sidewalks eventually.
Mhm.
This is an opportunity to do that.
The first, like a first piece in the puzzle.
Well, it's like the fifth or.
Or yeah,
sixth.
but yeah, without.
Eventually, as you can see with Dunkin' Donuts, you know, that was a recent submittal that we had that kind of conversation with. That's all I.
You don't have any other questions? Thoughts? They got the variances for that.
Everybody might have to speak on that. We just kind of walked in. I don't want to hit him with it.
Sure.
Just give him something. What we're talking about, Mike, is having a sidewalk on the development, the development site for the car wash.
Okay,
It,
along the roadway, you mean?
not off the site, but on the site. If, we're gonna be asking you that, and I just wanted to give you an opportunity to think about
So
it.
to create a green space between the curb and the sidewalk itself?
Kind of similar to what the other recently developed sites have. So that eventually we'll have an interconnecting sidewalk through that corridor.
So that was one of the comments from the county planning board. So we've looked at that since the county planning board meeting and, up and down Route 3, it does vary where the sidewalk's located. The problem with moving it off of the curb on Mr. Buck's site is there's a change in grade on the Kodo restaurant site such that if we were to push that sidewalk onto Mr. Buck's property and create, whether it's a 2-foot green strip or a 6-foot green strip off the curb, now you're in a position where it's no longer connectable to the east.
You mentioned elevation.
Yeah, I have some pictures if that helps.
That would help.
Put that in the context. And I'm not trying to dismiss this idea, I just want to.
Nope.
We did look at this, so. So we're looking east to Kodos, and here's a utility pole. We have 53 inches from the back of the curb to the utility pole, so that, minimum sidewalk should be 48 inches, so.
Does that identify the property line?
No, the pole is right next to this concrete square right there.
Right here.
So, yeah, you can see the property line is actually, 5 feet to the west. So if we were to move the sidewalk back to here, this is where it would align to on Kodo's property. So it would take significant, I shouldn't say significant in terms of cost, but it would take work on Kodo's property to make that sidewalk connect to the east.
Yeah, and as I understood it, the progressive development theory is that eventually we'll have interconnectable. So although there's presently no adjacent sidewalks or no sidewalk on this site, that we could find in the future that these sidewalks would interconnect. And
Yeah.
we'd have safer pedestrian pathways.
So if you put the sidewalk back here on Dakota's property, that would, if this theory of connectivity continued, that would eliminate this entire row of Kodo's parking, I would assume. I don't know what their aisle width is between the parking at the building and this parking.
Yeah, when Kodo was established at a restaurant, it was previously a garage.
Oh, yeah.
Was it Honda?
Yep.
And
That's the building didn't
at
have-
that time, they didn't have front yard parking like they have today. So that in theory, as sites develop, we can try to make these things all connect.
Yeah.
So you would move to this side of the pole because of this dimension? Do I understand that correctly?
Well, if I understand Mike correct, what you would have is a cross slope on the sidewalk that would be non-consistent with ADA regulations.
Right.
Is that accurate?
If Mr. Buck stopped the sidewalk at the property line, there would now be a 8-foot grass stretch on Kodo's property. And part of that grass stretch would be, what's left of some landscaping timbers and a 8 to 10 inch drop. Now, this is a temporary sign for the road work, so that doesn't really belong.
Okay.
But, it would take improvement on this stretch of Kodo's property.
Yeah, well, I think we have to look beyond that because we can't ask you to develop Kodo's property, but it's that connectability as sites develop that we're looking to project.
Sure.
If you're telling me that a cross slope in here would be inconsistent with ADA regulations.
Well, it would be from the edge of the green space down to the
Okay.
Kodo driveway. We might have survey points a little bit onto here because we did pick up the edge of pavement. So could we, engineer what that, that sidewalk grade would need to be to tie back into the pavement? Probably. But, we necessarily can't go do that work.
Yeah, we can't anticipate that you'll be connecting into a mound of dirt.
Right.
We have to rely on in the future, the planning board's being consistent with development theory that that sidewalk will, when the Koto site's developed, connect with your sidewalk, and then it could be insisted on. That makes sense?
Okay. I mean, I think Mr. Buck is committed to putting sidewalk the full width of his property. So whether it's right at the back of the curb or in 5 feet, I don't know that it would matter to him. But I just wanted to show you sort of the conflicts out there we were trying to work around.
Yeah, so as you develop the site, if you could keep that in mind, that, you know, we're not asking you with the existing grade that's there, because that's not gonna work. But when that site's developed, the anticipated elevation would be, you know, kind of more in line with the overall objective.
Walkable to
Yeah.
the east and west.
Yeah.
Now to the west, it does jog out, the poles move closer to the curb line, so their sidewalk, if you want to call it that, does come off of the back of the curb. It's asphalt. So I think to the west, shifting it back doesn't really create an issue. It's just to the east, to Koto's.
I'm sorry, I was curious again. You're being forced to move to this side because of the dimension between the curb. Here's the drawing, between the curb and the pole.
Well, no, that's what we were proposing because we felt that was the simplest way to connect the sidewalk through to the east. But what Rick is asking for is consideration of the sidewalk going back here, which we can do from Mr. Buck's property to property, but it would, you know, it would end somewhere right in here.
And that's to get it away from Route 3.
That's to be more consistent with other site development approvals, in that eventually, when all sites are developed, you'll have that pedestrian friendly ability to, people can move through.
So the alignment's better with the anticipated development.
And it will be on their site
So
versus in the city.
west of Aaron's is Domino's, and it's at the Domino's. It's at the west end of Domino's that the sidewalk moves to. I don't know the distance here on Google Maps, but moves back from the curb.
It's about 5-6 feet.
Yeah, and so, and then that continues. McDonald's, it's backed off the curb.
Kentucky Fried has something also, don't they?
Yeah, it's pushed back. I think.
Starbucks, it's, well, now.
Yeah, so from Starbucks, from the corner of Healy Ave to Consumer Square, it does what we were proposing.
Yeah.
It, as this photo shows, it hugs the curb line and extends that way. So this is sort of what we used in, you know, preparing our plan. But if you want to shift and try to have it behind the right of way, then
Yeah,
other than this dead end sort of condition, I don't see a problem.
okay. Oh,
If we're good.
sorry. I've been
Nope,
rambling.
no, that's all right. So good on that one as far as discussion before we start.
I will add one. I think that was a great conversation. We could just reiterate it in the open meeting as well, just so it's on the record.
Yeah,
So, but other than
it's
that,
something we'll be asking your staff as well, you know. And it probably should have been done when the first site development request was made, that, you know, pedestrian friendly sidewalks could be not adjacent to a traffic lane.
It's interesting, on the north side, it is off the curb more consistently. Texas Roadhouse, it's off the curb. Texas, that may be,
That's in the town.
that's down.
Yeah.
Hey, Rick, just a quick comment. The city is pursuing a quote for a proposal from the same consultant that developed the town's Route 3 corridor plan to create something similar for the city, so there is uniformity of development along that corridor.
Perfect. Thank you. I just be quick.
Okay.
The reason I bring that up, Matt, is because of the consistency and direction of the board to apply these features to properties during development rather than try to recreate it, because it is the development of private property versus the public roadway.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I appreciate hearing that. Thank you.
Okay, we good? We'll call the regularly scheduled planning board agenda for Monday, August 23rd, 2021 to order. If we can all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, can I have a roll call, please?
Emma Bella,
Yes.
Derek Rosenbaum,
Here.
Rick Perry,
Here.
Red Carter,
Here.
Kurt Burbidge.
Here.
Rhoda Reed Smiles, excused.
Thank you. And also like to welcome our new planner, Ethan Vincent, who this will be the first meeting.
Yeah, big shoes to fill, but luckily we have a very experienced board and we have Shalice as well. So, it's a good situation. It's a good situation.
Great. As discussed in the pre-meeting, looking to adjust the agenda slightly. We have tabled item 127 Court Street at the end, which is coming back with new information. We move that to the first item on the agenda, followed by 144 US Oval, and then New Way Car Wash. I will be recusing myself from that, which would end the agenda for tonight. The board doesn't have any objection, we can move in that fashion. Okay. With that then, once again, first item on the agenda, 2021-13, 127 Court Street Historic Site Review. That was tabled at a prior meeting. My first task would be to take it off the table, I guess. So do I have a motion in that regard?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Rick, second by Kurt. Roll call.
Emma Bella,
Yes.
Derek Rosenbaum,
Yes.
Rick Perry,
Yes.
Red Carter,
Yes.
Kurt Burbidge.
Yes.
Ethan, you have a
We have a
brief summary?
brief summary.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, and then some change words. Giving a little taste of what's to come.
Okay.
Exciting stuff. So this is a historic site review located on 127 Court Street. Project is, and the applicant has been before the board before. So at the last request of the planning board, there was some additional information that they wanted for the image for the siding, how it sits with the proposed siding, the vinyl. So I guess I'll go through my PowerPoint because I created that. But here's the location of the site in registered historic district, which is why it's before the board, and it's a contributing building. There's the front facade, side facade on Wells Street. At any point, if the board would like me to slow down or go back to the slide, just let me know. Another image, some of the example of the affected area presented by the applicant. And then another close-up of the area, an area affected as shown by the applicant. These are just the documents that help register this individual building, talking about some of the components, such as the wood clapboard and other architectural features of the building. So you've seen this before, but and it's in the packet, the different preservation attempts made by the applicant, such as painting the building multiple times to address this this issue. Some samples that were provided by the applicant showing the cost differences between the vinyl and the rehab of the wood clapboard, which the total here being the $4,000, roughly $4,000, and the difference being with the rehab being more, if my eyes working, around more like 19, 18 grand. Oh, sorry, no, a little more than that. But essentially, there's a cost difference. The applicant, at the request of the board, provided some more information. One of the questions were what architectural features will remain, and that was something also that SHPO had a concern as well initially. The applicant provided these highlighted images showing all the trim and other features that wouldn't be impacted by the proposed project in front of the board.
It should be noted that I'm not an artist.
It's in the record. And then this is the side of the building as well. Once again, same highlighting the features that were not to be impacted by this proposal. With this and this last image is showing the proposed siding on top of the existing wood clapboard as proposed by the applicant, showing it that it's not proud, sits proud, as the board had requested. We had taken this information and other information provided by the applicant and provided that to SHPO for updated determination. SHPO, the main takeaway, went over it in the working session, but that they reviewed the submission, but they still do not find that the vinyl siding is appropriate with preservation standards. They had suggested fiber cement siding as a potential alternative. There will be a chance when the applicant comes and speaks to, have a discussion with the board about pros and cons of this. I know, as discussed in the work session, we got this on August 19th. Not a lot of time to digest by the applicant, not a lot of time to digest by the board, so it'll be a time to talk. And that's it for 127 4th Street. So, let the board go at it.
Thank you. Mr. Lattenville. You have anything? Ooh.
You see the information regarding the siding that SHPO suggested. And I didn't have time to do it all, but it's from Sean Burnell from Samples.
Cement board?
Cement board. So what's the difference? She said, what's the request? I have no reason to pursue that. Samples, I can get you samples, from samples. And if you need estimates, I can do that, but we already have the estimates. Even if it's double the price, 2.5 times the price, it's still prohibitive to put that on. And from my interpretation, what SHPO said, they say affected areas, which would involve 2 kinds of siding, which to me seems not foolish, but not consistent, definitely not consistent. My goal is, from that photo you saw, we'll go to refer to that picture again, when you see the siding sits on the crowd. We showed this was done before. I don't like it. And if you look at that picture, you're going to see it's this. It's triple. It's not double. This is better. That's, if you see that picture, the double just doesn't fit. This is it's a perfect match. To go triple doesn't make any sense for the cost. It's not really. Butter for brakes. Problems a nightmare, some had the same problems, the weight. This makes no sense. I asked the board to approve this one.
I appreciate what Chippo's trying to do. We had this discussion at the last meeting. To keep it where it is, the best alternative I can find is this one. It's exact, close to exact. It fits and breathe behind it. Could you put that picture back up with a terrible pink highlight? Please. There.
This one?
Yeah, that one, see where it fits? It's a perfect fit. Go back to one more, please. The paint. Okay, I apologize for your runs. But everything you see white is gonna be white. It'll be this. Nothing else changes. I'm going to paint whatever is there. Nothing. Originally, I had asked to go put some flashing on the front, some coil stock. I thought I might be able to coil stock this, make it look good, and put it down here. But you didn't want that. Coil stock would look nice, but if you don't want it, I'll paint it. You know my appreciation that I have for older buildings. I want to keep this the way it is, but it's getting expensive to keep it the way that it is. To the outside architecture. Picture of what the inside looks like. This is what the floor looks like. It's beautiful. And it took me twice. There was a motorcycle inside there, and I had done those floors twice since I owned it. When I bought it, there was a motorcycle. That's a picture from the other. Stairways have been twice, the floor at least twice needs it again. But to keep the integrity of the outside of the building, and clear the curb appeal, this is the best. I appreciate, again, Chippo wants to do. What was the warranty in this, 4 years? What was the warranty in the last one? Remember that? 34 years. It's an incredible warranty. It's maintenance free. You don't have to go back and scrape it. You don't end up with areas like this, which happen every 3 or 4 years because it runs off square up on that roof that I was advised not to touch. Come around the flip side over here on this building, it's a constant water problem in the inside corner. Same thing here. With this, pressure wash. Every year, every 2 years, up and down, I'm out of there. And if you come see me in July on Sunday, on Saturdays, I love the pressure wash. I can't comment on Chippo. They're nobody, they don't know us. All I have is their letter. I appreciate their input, but this is our town.
I have a question for you, Jim. One of the subjects that we talked about was the depth of the J channel. Is this the lower depth?
Yeah, this is all you get.
Okay.
I asked, we even asked if we could shave this down. It's a caulking nightmare. And go back in a few years, it's going to discolor. I even said, how about if we don't? Just put it against the. Like this. Again, caulking nightmare. You still have to do it. You're going to end up with white streaks. Where it meets all the way down here. Nothing but highlighted over the weather, especially in this corner. I didn't have any see there.
I don't remember the dimensions we had talked about, but there was the difference between a, correct me if I'm wrong, a 5/8 inch J channel versus a 1/2 inch. That was part of the discussion. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the 5/8 or is that the 1/2 inch? Okay.
Oh, I don't know. It looks like a 1/2 inch, but if you pull J channel out of the.
This is the one we used, Rick, when you came over. Rick came over, looked at it.
It says 1/2 inch.
He was
1/2
there.
inch, yeah.
Where? This is 1/2 inch.
And that's what's in the picture.
It does match up with
These
the
are-
product though, because you can end up with 5/8. It all
Yes.
depends where you get it. And
The what?
you can end up with 5/8. It depends on the product. You know what I mean? The style
This
of
goes
siding.
on this.
Once again, you can end up with the trim channel that will be thicker. I've got thicker stuff on my house. You go pick it up at the lumberyard, it's half inch. So,
Really?
yeah, you gotta match like siding to
I'll
trim.
make sure that.
Yeah. Does that, now that siding profile, is that as close as it comes in terms of what you have there for the wood siding in terms of exposure and depth?
Yeah, see the picture?
I did.
Yeah.
So, you know, but that's as close as you.
This is the product right here.
Okay. I saw another picture before, I think it was maybe last month or somewhere. How do you plan on handling your corners? Are they actual corner pieces or?
We talked about that. We talked about coming up, butting two of these on my side to make an outside corner, which might look good. Inside corner. Because we had it
There had
there.
a picture of it.
So they don't make corner boards?
Yes, they do.
And what you're proposing is you'd have two of the
You want
channels
it less pronounced.
you're holding that would butt up against each other?
On an outside corner, we could butt the two against each other.
Yeah, because the inside corners, as I remember, have a square stock. Is that correct?
Show that. This after you left. it was- there it is. That help? Was that it? Sorry, I should have done something on the head.
Remember giving the board last month, I
There's a bigger
shared my site vision.
Yep.
Or site visit.
I think so. I mean, they obviously do make a true corner piece. I guess the question comes down to, you know, you have some different angles on this house that aren't like a 90, you know, they're like an open, yeah, they're open corners. You know, that might take a little research on what type of trim they would have for a true corner in an open setting like that.
Yeah, I can do that.
It's the inside piece, square stop, the inside, so the installation description would be pretty consistent with the square stock and corner butted up to it. That's that if it's gonna create a 90-degree angle.
So in terms of the letter that was received from SHPO at this point, have you had the opportunity to resubmit and update all of your information to the point of when we got that letter?
Yes.
Including all details, they're clear on what you're proposing.
Every option I would have, every possibility of putting it in the corner, and inside. Even close stock to do the outside and determine that you only wanted the siding done. And that's what I determined. Your half inch J-channel, I even looked at door. Top of the door.
Hmm.
To put against the J-channel. This would be less. Really thought about bending coil stock. Can you bring that paint up again, please? Yeah. Probably what you're gonna see is a lot of, once we paint it, it's gonna be inside.
A few different photos. um, Some are of the. outside.
Just around, that's the upper area where the flashing is, yeah, inside corners. I have to admit though, if you go back one, you're not gonna see those inside corners, because they're pretty much hidden by the outcrops. In the bay window.
What I'm looking at is what you described as a proposed inside corner being more consistent with the square stock. As those corners butt up, they project out, which is what the square stock actually does.
What do you mean?
If you look at, see that inside corner right here?
Right here.
The inside.
Yeah.
Okay. If you, it's this piece right here.
Yep.
That's the square stock that the clapboard is butt into.
It's just like a J.
You're talking two J's together, which is the same projection. What makes it a little bit more difficult are the outside corners, where right now they're mitered together, and using J channel, they would project. And I'll be honest with you, my personal concern is the preservation of the structure and the architectural features. That is primarily what I'm concerned with, that the structure doesn't deteriorate and the historic character of the building be preserved. The features that describe the building's character are, you know, the soffits, the window casement, the detail on the floors. And those are the things in pink that you're identifying as what you would like to preserve. The red, and you said you put, I'm trying to remember from 2 months ago, so excuse me if I'm wrong. You replaced some of that clapboard siding, how many years ago on that back side?
You look up in the peak, the top where it says your screen share. That area was done about 7 years ago. And the area up above the window on the left to the just over that area was done at the same time. Around the corner, could I ask you to go back to the other corner? This one's been done twice, both of them will be. It's at, yeah, so. What's that? 34 years, 33 years. So every 15 years, this spots out and has to come over again. Same thing with up here. That area. That's a roof. That roof's been replaced once. And I put it back exactly the same way that it was.
So I guess I'll ask the question, is it your intent to leave the architectural features of the building intact as they are now, or is it your intent to kind of take measures to preserve them even further?
Well, that was to preserve them even further, I would have to come to you.
Well, and now's the perfect time to ask questions. If you're gonna preserve them
What I
by,
would like to do now
Scraping.
is stop the bleeding
yeah,
by the siding, by just putting the siding. I can paint the rest.
okay.
I can do the rest.
That is satisfactory to my question, okay? That preservation in areas that don't have rapid decay can be done by multiple methods. the areas that have rapid decay, as you're showing us by the illustration, and when we walk on site, paint in itself doesn't do it, but it doesn't have the same negative effect on the architectural features of the building.
So I'm sorry, I'm confused, Rick. Are you suggesting siding portions of the home and
I
painting others?
disagree with that interpretation.
Okay.
What I would like to see is everything that's highlighted in pink,
Mhm.
which I believe are the architectural features that give this building the historic character that it has.
Mhm.
And as a preservation method, I'm fine myself with vinyl
Mhm.
because it's going to last a lot longer than anything that's been tried and true on this building.
So you're suggesting, Rick, that the areas
I'm
that
not
are
making a
highlighted,
suggestion. I'm
you're
saying-
okay with the areas highlighted being covered in vinyl?
No, I'm saying that if he chooses to preserve by painting those areas that experience the vision of time, I guess. I don't know how else to I think it's an acceptable method if he were to paint those areas and anything that's in disrepair, repair it. And then the clapboard, I have no problem with that being siding because my focus is the preservation of the structure and the features that are noted. Is that
My understanding at this point is that you're proposing to replace essentially the clapboards. And everything that you've highlighted is really the architectural detail associated with that building. It's your intent at this point to maintain that as originally built, and you'll continue to paint those areas as you have in the past. Is that basically correct?
That's my.
The only concern that I have about the vinyl at this point are the terminations and what those look like. You know, the corners, both inside and outside. You know, we've got a picture of what they look like up against the windows. I don't really understand what they're going to look like as it relates to the other angles on the building, if that makes sense.
I think Rick had that.
I have the illustration of the inside corners. I don't have an illustration of the outside.
The outside corners, we talked about putting that. That's an alternative.
As opposed to a normal corner board.
Like what a normal corner board. I'm just trying to go for consistency.
I'm going to show this. You've got old beards.
I can't hear you either.
So a vinyl piece of corner is what we're talking about, right? Is that what you mean? Right?
Outside.
Yeah.
Rather than two pieces. So
Pieces.
the vinyl corner pieces are, I mean, I don't know how narrow you make them. Usually they're 2-3 inches wide on each side. So they really, I would think that would stick out even more.
That's what we don't know. You know, it'd be nice to see, you know, what those profiles actually look like.
I think in past history with applications like this, if the board had questions in detail, then we were looking for a more detailed plan. We've asked on a number of properties along the court for that. I would say between that and the board deciding that they're feeling about the SHPO letter, you know, that's honestly, that's a pretty big decision to make in terms of what that recommendation was and if we're going to deviate from that. Personally, I've asked a question about historic districts to a number of individuals in the city over my time on the board. I'm still not sure in general what the overall general public feels about historic districts, you know, whether, once again, a proposal for replacing siding on a building is the siding an architectural feature? I mean, past applications, except for one that I can think of off the top, where we made a justification of the reason that the building wasn't architecturally significant was that, but all others, the board has looked at siding as architecturally significant. I'm not giving an opinion one way or the other at this point, but I'm.
Wouldn't you say that siding is common in any building that's on there, and the only significant detail would be, the only difference would be in the detail itself, like the finials and so forth?
So I think,
Like Shippo said, which I'm not gonna change.
I think once again, the detail of how that siding goes on the building is a big one, how your corners are treated, how your inside corners are treated, how, what kind of detail, what's that gonna look like around your architectural features. I think one of the pictures that you've shown, it does show it to be proud of the architectural feature, I believe.
JJ.
Yeah, now, once again, I would just be looking for more detail on it. I've only seen a picture, and I don't even know if it was a formal application picture to, to actually supplement the application, or it was just a picture that was distributed through planning department at this point.
What was I handed?
I think I saw it last month.
I'm sorry.
In terms of the J channel trim,
Yeah.
was that in our?
This one?
No, I think I saw a picture where it was actually showed, just like you said, showed the J channel back to back on the corner. And then it showed the distance from the.
Last meeting?
Yeah, I don't know, once again, whether that was presented as part of the meeting or. But I do think either way, that application material should be consolidated and those details should be clear for members.
With alternative, like we were talking about corner pieces versus trying to create a corner piece with multiple.
With two pieces of
Yeah.
trim.
Recall that these are in a neighborhood directly across the street adjacent. And she's talking about they've got a big light on the corners. It does, don't mistake it, it does stand out. To eliminate that outside edge, make it less, you're not gonna get some vinyl siding without not making wood. Wood siding. So it's a matter of coming up with something that, see, there's a land outside corners, those are.
I see that. I'm not sure that I like the language that Shippo used. Where they say, in this case, alternative siding materials may be acceptable for specific areas. I don't think I like that. Jim's point, are they saying that it's okay to put vinyl on one part of the building, but not? Do we have the listing, historic listing,
The building inventory.
the building inventory? I thought I saw it.
So we can zoom in better.
Do they identify the siding in there as?
No.
I believe it's category, it's there as building material.
Thank you.
It's in there too, Reggie. That's in there too.
Okay, no, I'm good, thank you. If you continue down, Ethan.
The
Actually, yeah.
Oh,
Sure.
okay.
historical features.
Yeah.
Notable features.
That one has an H on it, an E. on it. It's misspelled in the-
So
I see your point, like the,
my point is, I think gave us a presentation that identified the areas. And if he's going to, preserve, maintain, and upgrade the appearances of these architectural features or notable features, I'm about saving the structure. And you can preserve historic character.
So I mean, as far as the wooden trim and lentils and the different pieces that aren't gonna be touched, but continue to be maintained by the applicant. If you look at the buildings down here, I mean, he's done just that with those. The different thing here is that it's, the actual platforms are gonna be covered with vinyl. So I guess it's just a question of how that's gonna come together, mainly just the J channel corners.
Yeah.
But I mean, seems that he's dedicated to taking care of maybe a little bit. But I guess that's just a question of what needs to see some examples of that, or assume that it's going to be taken care of.
Would you object coming back with some additional details to solidify the application?
Sure. Yeah.
To show exactly how, in general, it's going to,
Just the outside corners.
I would,
Specifically, this would be my third time back. The building inspector, I got push away. He says, when are you gonna do it? When are you gonna do it?
in terms of the repairs.
Yeah. And I've always gotten along well with building inspectors department. And do not want to taint those waters. But I can't put them off forever. And I want to do something before we do. It looks awful.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't we make a statement that was a message to the building inspector that we're trying to work in cooperation at the last meeting?
Yes, and that was related to the building inspector's office.
So
Have you been contacted since then?
Any messages I leave are not returned in any form, word, topic. So therefore, I'm kind of at a loss. Now I'm kind of swimming. I want to, Derek, to your point is well taken regarding what I've done over here at 50 pounds, 50 pounds, 50 Cornelia, 52 Cornelia. I remember as a kid walking by there and seeing that red brick. It took me 3 years to strip the brick and the slate. That's a dedication. That's a commitment. I took all of the stripper from Glidden, north of Glens Falls. They didn't have anything left. And I had to wait to finish it for the following year. The building was built 1820 next to it. I had to reshore up the foundation with the girders to put it back. It cost me $1,100. If you notice the chimneys that are there, it was built. In fact, it's in this packet. You drive by, take a look at the white building, it says 1820 on it. The chimney on the right was beat up. It had overgrown, a tree branch had taken it down. They said, take it off and go over it. No, I want it back the way that it was built. It cost $1,100 to get a special kind of ordered brick, which was period, which came over as ballast back in 1820 in British ships. To redo it. It's built the same way. I've done it with 52 Cornelia, where my office used to be. Building is gorgeous. If you've driven by where I am now on where the old DAR building used to be, the building, the paint, it's on the National Historical Registry. So therefore I'm tied as to what I can do outside, but the floors inside have been redone. I have a cannonball this big that weighs as big as you can get. It's the first thing you see when you walk in. I like old buildings. As Derek says, it's evident. I'm not going to bush league this thing. It's not my attempt. I would have done it years ago when Donnie Fineff was sitting on the roof and said, Jimmy, take this off and we'll put it on shingle. And I said, no, the building deserves it. This building, my old office, was built between 1865 and 1890. This morning I saw a 1902 Hubble shade that's one of my tenants broke, that I pulled out of the basement and put back. 118 years old, and some bonehead broke it, just walked away and stuck me for 2 months back, and there's nothing I can do about it. So am I frustrated? Yes, sirs. Yes, I am. I'm very frustrated. I want to thank you individually, both of you, for thanking me at the last meeting in June. It's the first time since 1985 that I've been in this business where anybody saying you've done a nice job with your room, and thank you. I don't say that to beat my breast, but geez, it's kind of nice every 35 years to have some, look back, but say, okay, nice job, Jeff. But no, I'm not gonna bush league this house. You obviously know that. I wouldn't be back here the second time around this. No, it's not my nature.
I don't think it would be too much to be specific, what we're asking Jim to present to us. Specifically, Jim, it seems like the corners, we all know what vinyl imitation clap versus clapboards are gonna look like. Can you bring in illustrations of alternative methods or
I can ask what's available.
the suggested method? If you could bring in that as
Is
an
there overlap?
illustration.
Jim, did they make overlap?
What's that?
Okay, channel we slide into, did they make an overlap to an outside corner? Shanice, could you pull that back up on any one of the outside corners? One more.
I just think we should be specific.
One more.
Just what they're saying.
I want to slow down for just a second.
This one. Shut up. Zoom in a little bit. You want this one? Hard to tell from this.
There are pictures in the dossier that we had a couple of months ago that illustrate, I think, what we're trying to show. That I can pass around if others don't have it, right? But I think it's pretty clear here. It's the same picture. It's just a little easier in the printout.
These corners are wider.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, we can pass it around. It's got the, yeah.
But that's how it is today, right?
Yeah.
I understand how it is today.
Yeah. Right, we don't, right. But he was asking Jim if it's possible to get something in vinyl that duplicates that.
I mean, you also think that what's across the street and all the other ones, I mean, this is gonna be done probably better than what those look like. So it's really just, we want to see two J channels butt up against each other in those corners, and all the different corners, or if there's another product.
There's
So
another
lower
product.
profile.
We're asking them to come back yet another time to make another presentation. But I think we should specify what we're asking them to illustrate. We know that lighter vinyl isn't going to work. I would even question whether lighter fiber ceramic board can work. It would chip and break. If you could show us what those corners look like, I think that would be appropriate. Even if you had to frame up the corner and show us, both the inside and outside.
We asked what they have for product.
Yeah.
Can't make it. Difference.
No. I think that resolves the illustration. We're only left to imagine what it's going to look like in the end. If you have an illustration that could take it out of our imagination and put it into reality, that would be, I think, helpful.
Yeah, well, I was going to say thank you again for all the historic preservation work that you've done in our community. Absolutely, no, I really do appreciate it, and I absolutely get why your patience is running thin. And I don't blame you at all, and I think also that it is right to give you specifics about what it is that we would want to see now for me, it's very difficult to look at a SHPO letter that says vinyl is not the appropriate replacement here, and they give an alternative. And I just don't want to dismiss that alternative so quickly. So if you are coming back with an illustration or a product, I would like to see the fiberboard be one of those examples.
I can tell you that,
Oh,
but the cost for me to even consider that triple price is.
so what I'm seeing online, which is just a Google search, and I'm no specialist at all with this, is anywhere from 5 to 50% of an increase, but it seems like the average sits around 20. Now, in the North Country and with the installers that we have, it may be very different. And so I'm not claiming that that is entirely accurate, but I'm not seeing 3%. And that is the guidance from SHPO, is to look at this material. So I would want that to be a piece of the recommendation moving forward. It doesn't mean that come back in a month and if the fiberboard won't achieve the goal, that we don't dismiss it then. Well, then we'll know that, but right now we're guessing, right? And
I only go on a basis of what my supplier will buy.
yeah,
Pricing on the lines a different animal.
totally. So don't do what I did. Try the suppliers.
I have a question regarding the,
But wait, I just want to add one thing, because the material is important, right? To say that we're replacing wood with vinyl, because that's not part of the important architectural feature, but the corners and the windows and things are. An architect would say, oh no, the material is absolutely an important part of the architecture. That's why some buildings are brick and some are stone and some are wood and some are vinyl, right? But the architect who designed this, I mean, it's a product of the time as well, but architects make choices, and that is also a choice. And we wouldn't replace a building on the Oval that's brick with vinyl. We'd say inappropriate, right? The brick is part of the building and part of the architecture. And we have a recommendation from SHPO about a substitute. I'm not saying that I'm married to this substitute, but I'm saying I at least think we need to do due diligence on that product before we make a decision to dismiss it.
question
Sorry, I didn't mean
regarding that cement board. We're really not replacing wood with vinyl, we're going over wood with vinyl. And the only cement board I've ever seen, you would remove the clapboard and attach the cement board. And I'm not aware of anything that you would put the cement board with a clapboard. Is that a fair statement?
It's a fair statement.
I mean, so it's a huge difference between those two alternatives in terms of, the cost. And it's material, labor, like,
The other point, I appreciate your comments, but on one hand, SHPO wants you to replicate the building material that was original, but they give you an exception to their liking. Fiber cement board is not wood.
No, I interpret it
Neither
as
is,
more,
neither is vinyl.
right, I interpret it as a closer substitute or a better substitute in the final look, right?
pardon me?
Go over.
Right.
Wants to remove.
It's a different type of clapboard, right? It's not versus a covering.
I'd be happy to show you if you wanted to do a field trip and come up to Telepine. Every building has the fiber cement board. They butt up to corners just as we're discussing. They are traditionally in a larger profile than 3 inches, traditionally. They are applied, as Rick said, to flat surfaces. Because you gotta remember that fiber cement board is fragile. So where you adhere it, you gotta adhere it to a flatter surface.
Mhm.
But I can show you what that looked like.
You made another good point, Rick. I've never seen fiberboard that dimensionally, as far as vertical dimension, is as narrow as what's on your building. I think almost by definition, be wider than, you know, the vinyl samples that we've seen.
We can find a way to.
I'd be happy to. That's. Not much of it.
Sad. No, no.
My only suggestion is if we're asking for specifics, among those should be the recommendation for jail.
It was easy for me to dismiss it because I am familiar with it, but to your point, I totally agree.
We're gonna have other applicants after other applicants after other applicants saying, here's what happened, and Shippo made a recommendation, which the board dismissed and went with vinyl.
Yeah.
We want to do the same, right? To cover
Yep.
COA.
Yeah.
Right, I mean.
Like I said, my goal obviously is the preservation of the structure first.
Mhm.
If the structure goes into a deteriorated state and you have structural compromise, what do you have left?
Absolutely agree.
Yeah,
But if we're asking for detail, the Shippo recommendation should be among the
it should
detail
be on
items.
some details.
Yes.
Oversight. I agree with you.
Would you say that it's a recommendation and not a mandate? Tip is a recommendation, not a mandate.
Correct.
So we can say, we note, I understand your precedent. Thoroughly understand.
So Jim, at this point, obviously, like your building, you consider that historic.
Right.
Okay. So that's one thing that's a little different than like the one other building we saw with vinyl.
I don't take
Those
those
differently.
products and units. Yes.
And I think, once again, just like the rest of us recognize, you've done an excellent job restoring many of your properties that you have in the city here. With that said, this is unique in my experience here on the board. You're making it further than I have seen anybody, honestly, in terms of even this discussion and consideration.
But Karen,
Yep. And I think this has reached the point, at least in our current timing, siding is like what the board looked at for roofs. You know, we have people that come with slate roofs. You know, we have made the consideration to do alternative material. I think right now, our, you know, buildings in these districts are getting to that point where siding is getting to that direction as well. Now, in my mind, it's making sure that this first application or second application is complete and documents everything to make sure the board makes an informed decision.
See, and
I think that's.
when we approved Steve Tays, there was about a quarter of this discussion. And we didn't even talk about what are you gonna do around the windows and all that. So is the difference there that it's not a historic building? And this is a historic building on the register?
I was gonna say, I think
It's in the district, historic district, but it's not a historic building. So, that's where I'm trying to
my
figure out.
office is an historic building.
Right.
In the registry.
It's in there somewhere. I know the answer.
I was gonna say, so
It's not a historic.
that's really what it,
Contributing building.
that's.
Is that why we just didn't give it as much questioning and detail?
I believe that Rick actually made that point as part of the reasoning that, yes, we went down that looked at that application specifically in that regard.
And then the other ones all in that area across the street, were they all converted to vinyl before?
So
before it was before they couldn't do it? That's what I'm trying to, or were they approved because they're not historic buildings or?
I'm not sure. Some of those I think were before my time, but I can't tell you when I first came on the board, there were you know, people that redid, did roofs that didn't come here. Were referred after the fact. All different scenarios. The one thing though I can say is that once again, we just had a second application between that one and the one we have in front of us where we told the couple they couldn't do vinyl siding. That
No, we
was,
didn't actually make a determination. They just decided to come back. Looking at
we
that they probably weren't gonna get it.
yeah, I think we were pretty clear with them. That,
They withdrew, right, essentially?
yeah, that was a big.
But we didn't
jump.
actually make a determination.
No, we never made a final determination.
Great.
So. With that said, once again, I sort of think it's timing. Now, I see it as, we're starting to see enough of these applications. We see, buildings, side out that in the district that have vinyl siding. Others that are deteriorating to the point where they're going to need something.
So yeah, that's my feeling is that, I mean, even when Jim takes care of the building, it's still gonna look like crap for a few years before it gets to the part where you need to paint it. So you can paint it, it looks good for a few years, and whereas vinyl, you can have a longer lasting look that's gonna stay nice looking. I think keeping all the woodwork, the trim, that's obviously the most important piece. Then it's just figuring out what's it actually gonna look like at the corners. And I think it's gonna look better than the buildings across the street. But I see being careful setting a precedent as how we're gonna treat it. But I think I feel personally that you probably do a good job figuring it out with the J channel, figuring it out. But I understand we also need to see more specific examples. So that's how it feels.
I think there may be another alternative. We could request a narrower trim board on the corner. Then you could put your J channel against the narrower trim board rather than a 3-inch or 6-inch vinyl profile. If you mitered
Put a
two
two on both
trims
sides of the corner.
and then your J
And then put
channel on the inside of
That's
that,
That's good.
it would be worth looking at, I think.
That's just what the inside corner is.
Yes,
Exactly, only reversed to the outside corner.
correct.
And you put two on the corner like this, and then put your J to it, and then slide
With your J,
and still get the corner.
and then you can change the dimension of your profile.
Mhm.
You could make it an inch, you could make it 3 inches, you can customize it. And yes, it's a wood product. That would need attention, but they make it in,
Mold,
what's the plastic?
PVC.
It's a PVC.
The exact product or
Yeah.
They make that 1 inch, don't they, like a last.
to make it all,
Shoot it on.
make it all dimensions, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that would be nice. That's a good alternative.
something to
And
look
it
at.
doesn't need painting, it will
If it's
rust, rot, peel,
PVC, yeah.
and it'll match.
Say that, there's a number of different products out there, PVC that you can.
I would do that. if you want me to.
I was just reading in one of the other applications that, one of the considerations as it relates to vinyl is whether or not it changes color over time, right? I mean, it may yellow as an example. So introducing another material, I think a consideration as it relates to, what those two materials are going to look like, down the road, 4, 5, 10 years. And given it's vinyl, if they age differently, I think that would really stand out and it would be very difficult to correct.
Yeah. It's
Clean.
more, yeah, more commonly you would see oxidation on vinyl as the color change
Yeah. Versus
versus a staining.
just clean.
You can paint all of it.
If there's a vinyl or plastic, what do you call
The
PVC
it?
trim board.
Yeah, PVC.
Yeah,
If you call it PVC, laugh all the way up, but to it. Keep it clean. I don't like the buildings, the white building stands out, especially in the corner. And this one I do admit mistake, so, well, we're painting and pressure wash. That's before we paint and pressure washing. It was a show.
So what do we want to see? As an example. Every type of corner with PVC and with 2 pieces of J channel to compare.
I would
I guess-
myself entertain, you know, your most desired corner, what it would look like. And then maybe an alternative to that.
Another way maybe of saying that, you know, we do respect what you've done with these buildings, Jim, and we've talked about that. And I'm certain you understand the concern as it relates to, you know, how these vinyl pieces terminate. And I'm certain you want it to look right. And ideally, we'd like a little mock-up that would show what an internal corner termination is going to look like, and what an external corner termination is going to look like, regardless of what channel you select. From your point of view, you know, presenting to this board, what you feel is the best solution to maintain the architectural integrity of that building and to give you the level of, what's the word that I'm looking for? Reliability that you're looking for, you know, over time. Because the driver is maintenance, right? Pardon me?
I can only do it based on what's manufactured. It's only based on imagination on the idea of coming up with plastic, lath, PVC. Good idea. It's made for outside, let's find out.
It is.
It's made for weather, okay, there we are. And there's our corners. Back, you can get them 1/2 inch thick probably, shoot them all the way up, you get an outside corner like this, and put it up.
I'll give you an example, Evan Bracey's law office.
It's burgundy.
Yes.
Yep, great.
We put the PVC,
It flows.
yes.
I just did my house with cement, fiber siding, and we did PVC trim boards on the sides, on the corners to butt up against it. So I guess I say that because they make it and you can, It is meant
You probably have big boys.
but you can. But yeah, so I guess what Rich is saying is you look at what you think is best and then show us images of an inside and exterior corner.
Sure.
Well, what I was saying is, it sounds like the 2 best options are 2 pieces of J channel.
Almost there. All we need is the outside corners and the inside. As you want to see what it looks like on the inside, you want the same on the inside as you want on the outside?
Whatever you feel looks the best.
How would I know?
Just going back to Jim's point, I mean,
This
we're
looks
setting a
nice.
precedent in a way. You know, we expect there's more to come. We've got a letter that we're dealing with. That we want to respond to rationally. And if the alternative is wood, I'd like to be able to articulate why we felt the overall benefit of the owner in the community and looking forward, vinyl in this application was a better solution.
Well, wouldn't that decision you make on this in the next one that would come up, taking this as a case study, with the process that we've gone through to get down to the adhering vinyl, say if we vinyl on there, would be a precedent for the next person coming in. That, look, we just could go willy-nilly. This is what had to be meant, this is what had to be meant, etc. Now, we had a discussion last time that people were mistaken about. The buildings in this area are on their way. What was that awful one down on, is it Williams? Jesus, it's got ugly green, and I'm sorry, I should say that. It's in disrepair and deferred maintenance. And it falling down, the porch is falling down, it's just some kind of it's horrible. Now, for me to buy that, come here in front of you, it would be a nightmare. How can I maintain the integrity of that, given that? And remember, I talked about last time, Reg, that I toured Europe. And when I toured Europe, I visited sites that were very special. Camps, and they were deteriorating. Now, at what point do you decide it's going to rot and lose its integrity, or you cover it, or you repair it and lose its integrity and maintain the philosophy behind it, which is the same thing here. What do? They have the same problem. And the point is well taken. I mean, I'm a study of, I like history. I like maintaining history. How do I do it? But how do I do it in your point taken? How can I do it without a precedent? And I think the process by which I'm going through here shows that the next person who comes in will have to do the same due process I have. Is that well said or said? That makes sense?
I'd agree. It's a fair
It's not a walk in the park by any way. I mean, I'm here again, coming back again. It's not a walk in the park.
So I absolutely agree. I just want to make sure that if we're using this as a case in which we change precedent, which is what we may be doing, right? We do it with full due diligence, which includes the material recommendation from SHPO.
With due process, they're gonna have to show the same that I did in the future.
Yeah.
With the same questions you asked, doing the same thing. I'll comply. I want this business done. I want this building done. I want it to look nice. I don't want to bug up the board either.
So Kurt, what I heard from you is, we've got the comparison of wood to vinyl. You want to throw the
That's the recommendation from
cement
SHPO.
board. You
And
want to throw the cement board into that comparison.
I can, but I don't want to do it.
yeah, I hear you.
I can, I just don't wanna do that. It's futile, Kurt. In all honesty, it's just futile. It'll break. I'm gonna get an awful lot of waste, it'll be 10–15% waste at least on that product. You gotta take the old stuff off. Now what do I do with that stuff? Get rid of it, disposal fees. Plus, it's probably leaded, which is another thing that I don't want to deal with. In order to get it over a period of time, unless it's perfect, you've got a lot of shimming, and you're probably gonna have to put another OSB board over it or some kind of decking.
So I think.
So you're gonna have to, and then you're gonna lose the crowd and all of it.
So I think the intent is to.
I can appreciate SHPO, thank you, that's right, it's my money, but thank you very much.
But I think for the board's purposes, it's solidifying that within your application, exactly
I see what you're talking about.
how you're.
Yes, I do.
We're being asked to disregard two SHPO recommendations.
I can answer that,
One,
SHPO.
replacing the wood, right, in kind, not doing in kind. Two, disregarding their recommendation of fiberboard for vinyl. And if we're gonna,
Last time I brought you in wood, remember? We
Yeah.
brought in wood, we stacked it here, Reg got, I think you got the pile today home.
Yeah.
And it was a wood pile, so we had wood for wood, and we had vinyl for vinyl, and we broke it down vinyl. And that addressed SHPO's questions, and if they want that asphalt, bring it in, sure, and we can address that and put it on that, and then address.
But it's really economic analysis of alternatives, right?
No.
You've done wood. And you've talked about, the pros and cons as it relates to wood. You've done vinyl over wood, including some of the architectural details, and you've rejected that in a sense because you want to maintain the architectural integrity. So you've gone to a hybrid, which is a combination of wood and vinyl. So you've done those already in a sense. And now what we're suggesting, in order to make certain we're making an informed decision, it's doing the same thing as it relates to cement board, and as Jim pointed out earlier. Essentially, you articulated that just a few minutes ago. Why, from your point of view at least, that's not a good alternative. It's just memorializing.
so I would, I didn't mean to interrupt. But for me, it's not an economic question, right? In all of the guidance, in our own code and in the National Park Service guidance and in the state historic preservation guidance, economic analysis doesn't enter into the equation. It's about what preserves the building. And we can't be in a position where we're saying, in this case, it's 50% more, but in the next case that comes, it's 8% more. We overturned precedent in one case, it's 50% more, but 8% doesn't rise to that. But in the next case that comes, it's 30% now.
Well, maybe,
Right?
maybe I
And-
picked the wrong word. It's
We
really.
did not buy a home in a historic, in a historic district, and, right, and people do buy those homes, and they need to understand that there is a cost to maintaining them, which I understand you get and have done an amazing job of doing, right? But people need to understand that when they purchase a home.
But the, you know, the economic does come into every single one of these applications we've seen, even for City Hall. And SHPO takes an economic analysis as some type of proof as why you do one versus the other. We've seen it on the Oval with Ovius' building. We saw it on City Hall. We've seen it in multiple ones. So I do believe that that does come into it, and we've seen cost analysis on everything that's come in. But from, I guess, to cut all that and just get to the point, I think Kurt is saying, also show us an example of what a fiber cement board would be looking up against society.
Yes,
As a
will it
major-
achieve the
And just to
historic
respond to-
preservation we're trying to do?
I
That's
like
the
to
question.
respond.
Just show us that, and then we can have it memorialized.
We can address it.
You know, I think we're trying to maintain our architectural integrity. And at the end of the day, I think we're trying to establish balance so we can achieve that. And I think when we start talking about establishing that balance, economics realistically enters into the decisions that we make, as exemplified by the examples that we just gave. You know, I think that's a reality.
Okay, so
What do you want me to
to
do?
clarify, we're asking for some additional detail as the applicant sees it in terms of inside, outside corners on the final option. And then we're looking for some additional detail on considerations for cement board siding. The details along with the installation methods, along with the economics to give a clear picture within your application of where you stand with it or how you feel about that. What recommendation by SHPO. So then we have, the board has a clear picture on the options. Can make a decision.
I think that's well stated.
Does that sound?
And I believe I can do that and bring it to the next meeting for you, and the point as well.
Is there any other?
It's not lost.
And is there any other
Why do I have to do
comments?
The only comment I have, we've all read the SHPO statement. When they use a broad term of alternative materials, plural, they didn't specify only fiber cement. So I'm confused by their statement, to be honest. If you read the entire paragraph, it's not really written very clear. So if it's written for us to interpret, they did a good job.
Okay. See you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We need a motion.
But
So
we should make a motion to table.
I'll make a motion to table application 2021-13.
Okay, do you have a second?
One second.
Second. Roll call?
Sarah Rosenbaum,
Yes.
Rick Perry,
Yes.
Reg Carter,
Yes.
Kurt Irwin,
Yes.
Jim Dillon.
Yes.
And Jim, take note of the application deadline too, or
As a returner, will be a little obviously more lenient, so
Yeah,
I'll
okay.
just make sure that your information for the next board. So that'll be the-
I think it's the third, it's the latest.
which day?
When is it, next week?
No, the next.
That's what I had this time.
Couple days ago.
So I know Shalish just pointed out the deadline is the third, so I mean, you can be, you as a returning applicant, we can be a little more lenient. if the
Oh,
board's okay with that.
a little more, because
So,
I have to rely on other people to get this one.
I mean, technically, this is a tabled application,
So it's
so
on
it's
the
on
agenda.
the agenda next
Oh,
month.
Okay.
So automatically.
Regardless, the biggest thing is that the application material or anything new can be processed by planning staff, which I think gives a little bit
Yeah.
of leeway.
So when do you guys need it?
So within the week before, maybe the latest.
Well, I'll start hustling
The
tomorrow.
latest.
To confirm, you don't want whatever he's submitting going to ship, correct? It's just for you guys to review, because that changes the timeline of what's needed.
I'll leave that up to the applicant on whether they, on response to SHPO and coordination with planning staff.
So when's the next meeting?
The next meeting is the 27th, the deadline that we would need probably the 3rd for circulation among departments.
September 27th.
So then the week of the 20th, you're saying?
We usually try to get the packets to you guys by the 22nd. So we need, maybe a day or two to staff the reason.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Moving to the next agenda item, planning board application number 2021-15, 144 US Old Historic Site Review. Before we start that application,
It's not here yet.
the applicant is not here. Okay. Do we have anybody on Zoom for? Okay.
No
Well-
one's here for 144 US Old.
So if no one is here for that application, the board has in the past required applicants to be in attendance. Yep. For presentation of an application. I think we have looked at tabling an application that's on the agenda. There is no one here. So.
I would make a motion to table the item.
Roll call.
Rick Perry,
Yes.
Rick Carter,
Yes.
Rick Rubber,
Yes.
Tina Bello,
Yes.
Derek Rosenbaum.
Yes.
And once again, if for some reason the applicant did come in attendance, it can always be taken back off the table. Yeah, we can hear the application if they can later tonight, for instance. Was that? Yeah. Okay, moving to the last application item, planning board, application number 2021-12, New Way Car Wash Site Plan. So for this application, I recuse myself with AEDA's involvement with the site plan preparation. Derek will take over as chair. Noted to the applicant, we do not have an alternate, so it'll be a 4-member board.
Okay. So we have item 2021-12, New Way Car Wash Site Plan. And again, just to reiterate what Jim said, that we have 4 members. So in the past, we've left it up to the applicant when there's less than 5, I guess, but if they would still like us to act on the item. So that's up to you guys, but Ethan, you have the information.
So here we have a site plan review. New Way is returning since the last time they presented in front of the planning board, some changes have been made. A proposed 10-foot high solid vinyl fence. The building square footage has been reduced. And they have provided some other information. I will go through as the slides continue. So the location at 321 Cornelia Street, it's in the yellow, is in the B2 district. The 3 variances required for this project were all approved by the zoning board at their last meeting. An image from Cornelia Street, looking at the site. The back end picture of the site. The existing fence, which of course will be proposed as a 10-foot high solid vinyl fence right there from the noise remediation. And the new proposed site layout. So as from the difference from the before, the second queue lane has left. They had reduced the building size, and that of course increased the open space. They still have the 15 stacking spaces as required. As part of this as well, in the images provided, but they did do a noise analysis as well as some stormwater analysis provided. And I guess that's all we have for the slideshow here. Like another consideration is the county planning board did approve the project. Their comments were about the size, how the proposed sidewalk fit into the city's existing sidewalk. Director of Community Development Matthew Miller during the working session brought up the fact that the city is currently in the progress of exploring with the same consultants the town used for the Route 3 imagination is to figure out a way to connect that and make a cohesive pedestrian / vehicular corridor for the greater Plattsburgh area. As well as in the work session, there's a lot of detailed conversation about sidewalk, and of course I'm sure that will be reiterated here. And the only other staff comments were from the Department of Public Works about the oil water separator and grit separator. I had spoke with Mike a little earlier today for some clarification on my part, and I believe he will be able to address some of those concerns to the board, and that's all I got.
Okay. So just to let everyone know, we'll hear from the applicant, and then there is a public hearing. So anyone that is here that would like to speak. So during that time, then we have a seeker and the motion for the resolution. So that's what we have in front of us. Go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you, Ethan. Essentially, we're here in front of you for sketch plan. As Ethan pointed out, the significant changes since the sketch were, we originally had a 120-foot long building, so it extended 20 feet further towards the residential zone than it is now at 100 feet long. And we also had 2 rows of entry stacking. Originally, the thought as we sort of conceptualized this was to bring in as many cars as we could. But in analysis by the applicant, Mr. Buck, who owns several other car washes in the area, the single lane is sufficient for this property. It will have an automated pay station, but it's important to note he also employs people that will be on site during all open hours, typically around 3 employees. So with that, as part of the zoning discussion and just a general review of the operations, it was determined that an exit way would be advantageous to have on the site. So instead of the second entry drive, it'll be chained off, and then we'll have a circulation path in the back such that if a car gets to the front, and whether it's because of a roof rack or whatever reason they can't go through the building, the staff can have cars move. We're proposing movable planter barrels so they can make way and the car could exit out through the front. So that's sort of the key differences since you first saw this in the sketch plan. We did go in front of the ZBA and got the special use permit and got the variances for the side yard setback, this proximity to the residential neighborhood, and the special use for drive-through business on Route 3. And we went back to the county planning board for the site plan. They approved it, as Ethan noted. They did have conversation about the sidewalk entrance, very similar to the conversation we had pre-meeting this. Is it better at the curb line or is it better offset from the curb? As we reviewed, it can be located off the curb line on the applicant's property. The main issue at this point for why we aligned it as we did was the connectivity to the east through the neighboring property. So if we move it to the back of the property line, some improvements would be needed down the line on the adjacent property to make the sidewalk continuous to the east. That's this side. Do you have the other slides, Shalice?
They're not in the PowerPoint.
Oh,
On this point, so in the zoning chart, we've outlined all of the attributes for the property, the variances and the special use permit information. The main thing I wanted to point out on this slide, while we have the color, to give context, is existing site, it's, as you've probably driven by and seen, it used to be a automobile sales car lot. So it's completely paved with the exception of a small strip of grass along the east side and off the very back where the fence line is. So we're taking a site that currently has about 4% pervious area, and with the improvements, we'll be at 25% pervious area. So that brings a non-conforming site into conformance for open space. So I wanted to highlight that in this view where you can see all the open space. Could you click to the next drawing, please? So here we have just a simple dimensional plan that just illustrates the dimensions of a 25-foot driveway and a 4-foot green space to the building. The radius is in the back, which will allow the cars to maneuver. We have 4 parking spaces in the front, and on the side over here is the turning patterns. Essentially, Mr. Buck gets all of his deliveries at the Market Street location, so there won't be any tractor trailers or even FedEx for the most part coming onto this site. Mr. Buck will bring, or one of his employees will bring their detergents, their cleaning solutions, all their materials onto the property themselves. So that's what these 4 parking spaces are for, to allow them to bring in the materials and likewise to take any trash to their dumpsters on Margaret Street. So there's no anticipated large-scale trucks coming onto the site or exiting the site.
Is that also where the employees park? I'm sorry, I may have missed that.
Yes, correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And then Shalice, could we see the next slide, please?
Mike, just, sorry, a question back to the truck.
Yeah.
If the property were sold and let's say someone, that's the only car wash they have,
Sure.
what type of truck could get on there? As far as delivery.
I mean, entering the site wouldn't be an issue. You know, say you had a future owner that wanted a dumpster enclosure back here or had to take delivery for materials. I mean, we have a 33-foot driveway. So any vehicle could enter the site and pull over into the parking area. And then even back all the way in if you wanted to, remove refuse or whatnot. So it's not hamstrung because of, using the front as the employee area for deliveries.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So here we have the grading plan, which also includes the stormwater information. So it's an extremely flat site. Currently, there's a dry well in the back area, and then there's a catch basin in the front area that ties into a catch basin on the curb line. So essentially, we're gonna keep the same exact drainage characteristics and not drastically change anything on the site. The dry well will be replaced with a new one in the rear of the site. The one difference is currently that existing dry well doesn't have an overflow. So if this isn't accepting rainfall as fast as it's coming in, it would pond up and potentially run off onto an adjacent property. In the proposed project, we have enough gradient such that we can have an overflow pipe that will continue to the street side. So if this was inundated by a large storm event, rather than flowing off to adjacent properties, It'll go through the piping network and out to Route 3 to the closed drainage system. So we have another catch basin here along the curb line and another catch basin out front. The two other things with the stormwater from this is the roof will be collected internally and piped into the closed drainage system, so there won't be any roof runoff going across the pavement or onto the easterly water. And then a trench drain at the exit drive, should any vehicles still be dripping from below as they exit the drive-through bay. The trench drain will capture that and connect it in with the, as it's piped directly to the catch basin. So we've tried capturing all of the potential sources of rainfall or other runoff and connect to the city's existing system. Now, seeing as, we did a drainage report, we're reducing the imperviousness by about, I think it's around 3,500 square feet, which is an increase of green space of about 500%. So we're reducing the rainfall runoff from the site as a whole. So it was really an ideal site for Mr. Buck to redevelop in terms of his project. Water and sewer, we're gonna propose a new water service for the car wash. There was an existing abandoned water service from a former restaurant that was demolished previously. So a new water service, which we coordinated with DPW on, a new sanitary sewer system connection, which we've coordinated with DPW on. We've sent all the flow information and the soap chemical information to John Ruff. He doesn't seem to have any issues with what we sent over to him. So we've tried to coordinate all those things up front. As Ethan commented on in the write-up and previously, DPW's requested both oil water separation and grit separation. Mr. Buck's current car washes use an internal catchment system that settles all the grit out. So we'll have to look to add on to do oil separation, which is very similar to a septic tank. You're just trying to trap all the floating oils before it goes out to the sewer system. So that's really a building plumbing type of system that we have no problem complying with as part of the building design. So that's the utilities, generally speaking, and the stormwater. Does anyone have any questions before we move to the next slide? Yeah.
What's the effectiveness of the grit separator in the current car wash?
So currently the grit separator is it's a trough with a series of weirs in it. So as the water flows down slope, the grit settles out and then the water flows to the next chamber.
Okay.
And then maintenance wise, you just remove the grit as it settles. So the oil water separator would be after that, which would remove any floating greases or oils and trap it. And then likewise, he would have to have that pumped out by a hauler.
Are the current grit separator is working effectively? How often are those filters cleaned and how often is the oil separator?
So Claire, you can elaborate on that.
I'm sorry, one more time.
I'm curious about the effectiveness of the grit separator that's in your current in the current car wash, and if the same system seems like it'll be effective here.
I think it will be effective here, yes. We clean them as needed, right, depending on how many parts we wash it. Maybe once a month in the winter time. This one will probably have to be done twice a month. We'll have to use probably like a septic, like a clean septic tank. We'll have
Sure.
a place where they'll hook an attachment to be able to suck out the, it's mostly sand.
Okay.
Catching.
Okay.
We pump out the water with a sub pump, so it's not like it's not being gravity fed into the sewer system. So we're taking just the water itself out.
Uh-huh.
The pump doesn't do solids, so it's not like we're pumping sand into the sewer system.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
What's interesting about management of that kind of water is that the solids sink, but the oils will flow.
Yeah, right.
And so
Yeah.
it's
The next
You're
step
treating
is
it
also hard.
down below and up above at the same,
So
same process.
the other existing facilities don't have oil water separation?
No, they won't require.
That's just, do you know why? Based on
I would
time?
say, the one on Margaret Street, it's just, the age of it, about 75.
Okay.
But previous to that, it was a car wash, I don't know how long it was closed for. One over in the Skyway Shopping Center, it was done about 18 years ago. When they didn't require it, so.
I think the treatment plants are just getting more proactive and, safeguarding what comes in.
I mean, I'm not sure if they were worried about oil, leak, if that's a concern. Most of the equipment is electric. The only things that will be hydraulic are going to be conveyor and anything that functions below waste level. Everything up high is all electric.
I assumed oil coming out of the cars. I assumed it was for the oil that might come off of the cars. That was what I was assuming it for. But it's a recommendation from Public Works, correct? Ethan?
That was their comment.
Can I ask another question? While we're on this topic, are the soaps phosphorus based, or what's the cleaning agent in this?
So we're not a chemist.
Me neither.
So I'm not really sure.
Okay.
We did bring all the data sheets. It's with us. As far as I know, they're all biodegradable. Proper chemicals. Phosphorus base, meaning acidic or.
We spend a lot of time trying to keep phosphorus out of the lake, and detergents and soaps are one of the biggest sources. And so that's why I'm curious, but if you don't know, that's fine. Yeah, okay.
Mike,
I don't recall off the top of
Yeah.
my head. Like I said, we forwarded the MSDS sheets to John Ruff.
Yeah,
has
he
that
would.
information.
one question, the access lanes. Is the outside of that curved?
The outside, no. The inside is curved. Everything's sloping inward, and then we're curving this, and so essentially any rainfall will run across the gutter into the catch basins on this side. But this side we weren't proposing.
Okay, I didn't see it, so I thought I'd ask.
So I guess moving forward, here's two additional plans, a site lighting plan and a site landscaping plan. All of the lighting is proposed as wall pack fixtures. And the landscaping plan, we have foundation plantings all along with the strip along the building. And then a couple of clusters out in the front to provide some screening and beautification along the roadway. One item of note should be, should the city be interested in us relocating the sidewalk, we would just have to shift the sign location backwards accordingly. I see that as a potential thing to adjust. The hours of operation are 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So we didn't feel the need to go any further beyond the wall packs. As you can see, the exterior perimeter is all well lit. The entryway is fairly well lit. And then of course, Cornelia Street has its own street lighting. So,
That was a question I had.
Yeah.
Mike, what are the operating hours?
7 a.m. to 7 p.m. is what
Okay.
was presented to the zoning board. Have you thought about changing that or is that?
Okay. And will there be parking lot lights on 24/7? Or at 7 p.m. will those lights go off?
We'll keep the property for security.
So they'll probably have daylight sensors to turn on at
At
night.
least on the side, not the back of the building, at least on the sides of the building. I'm not sure what's there right now for. I think we have some city lighting, but maybe not perhaps for, on the utility pole. So, no, I think it's just transformers on this utility pole. Utility pole here with transformers. There's a guide pole across the way which doesn't have any lighting. Whether Kodo has their own internal rear parking lot lights, they may.
Will those cast over the fence to the property owners behind the car wash?
No, it won't go that far. So here's your basic erosion and sediment controls to maintain throughout construction that, you know, sediment doesn't leave the site, stormwater doesn't impinge on any of the neighbors with any debris or runoff. And then there's detail sheets with, I don't know if anyone's interested in looking at the construction details, but so this is the plan set, and I'm happy to answer any other questions if you have.
Let's talk sidewalks.
Okay.
You know, you had a conversation with Perry. You indicated that you would be prepared to move the sidewalk in onto the inside of the property.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, and I won't speak for Perry, I'll speak for myself and let him comment, but whatever the city would like to see in harmony with the Route 3 corridor, Cornelia Street corridor, I don't see it impacting the function or the cost of Mr. Buck, so I could make the modification without too much reservation. I don't know if Perry.
One thing that would drive me nuts is if we insisted on something like that, found that it was inconsistent with the city's plan of spending good money after bad.
Yeah.
If you could consult with Ethan, that would be acceptable as to location and consideration of, you know, previous
Sure.
projects.
And you as a board, as far as an approval condition, I just wanted to throw up here, I think you're planning on starting the work in spring. So if the city moves forward with the consultant and the wheels are in motion for a harmonized pedestrian design along the Cornelia Street corridor, we could certainly make the adjustment when we go for the building permit plans.
I think that would be appropriate to work in conjunction with community development.
Mike, I have a couple questions when you're done taking notes.
Yep, go ahead.
I'm curious how high the wooden fence behind the car wash is now.
So it's about 6 feet high.
So they've gone about 4 feet higher.
Yes, and I have a picture that I thought illustrated that a lot better than it did. So I don't have a good picture, but the property, so if we're looking at the back of the property, here would be the fence line this way. The properties behind Kodo have a significantly taller cedar hedge. So my one concern with putting a 10-foot high fence would it stick out like a sore thumb. But in reality, because of this taller cedar hedge, I think the fence would look pretty harmonious in terms of it continuing that buffer along the back of the property.
And have those neighboring property owners behind the car wash been consulted about the fence?
Well, I can refer, Mr. Buck did speak with the direct property owner, correct? Maybe I'm wrong.
Yes, but not about the 10-foot fence.
Oh, okay.
He was just concerned that he wouldn't be able to use that property anymore to be able to access his backyard.
Okay.
So
But they would have been notified with zoning.
Correct, yes.
Oh, yeah. Within 500 feet, within 500 feet. The current property owner cuts through there to pull in lawnmowers or something. Right. Okay. Okay. And is the fence is there anything about the fence? Does it have any soundproofing quality beside being a 10-foot high vinyl fence?
Right, yeah,
Is that possible?
a special sound.
I don't know. Is there, can it be insulated or anything?
I
Does that
honestly
help?
haven't researched it. I
Okay.
don't know if sound attenuating fences are a thing or not, but
Okay.
certainly just having the physical barrier does help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the car wash is closed at 7 PM. So
Correct.
I kind of agree with it. Can you add some vegetation to that backside to kind of absorb with vegetation rather than acoustical panels? Maybe a couple trees
in addition to the fence.
in addition to the fence. And the streetscape on it would, be more appealing from the public way. A couple evergreens.
Sure.
That would
Do you
be-
think a few cedars along the back?
Oh,
Fence line?
I mean, we will definitely do some landscaping back there. Trees are definitely not cheap. We'll
Okay.
get by our location on Margaret Street a lot in the last few years. And we try to keep that on with flowers and trees. We put a nice tree in the front. Big flower planter in the front, not bad for a lot of flowers. That's something it looks nice, right? And
Oh, yeah.
does it help absorb sound? I guess I didn't know that.
Have you ever had any noise or light complaints at that facility?
I guess Rick might be able to answer that. He's
Yeah.
on the inspector for years and years. I don't know if he ever-
Not that I remember. I can tell you from firsthand experience, 40 years ago, I worked at that car wash as a part-time job, so. Actually, it's 41 to be exact.
It's funny.
Mike, are these the accurate renderings of what it's, or at least something that
Yes.
was in the past?
No, so
Changed?
this is, these are our current renderings. So Mr. Buck's looking to do, glazed panels, windows along the car wash tunnel, so it'll be attractive and visually exciting. And then the glazed exit door, there'll also be a high-speed roll-up door due to our winters. So that, you won't always look at with the fancy door exposed. During operating hours, the high-speed roll-up door would be on the outlet side of it. As far as the second-story office, that would be in this area. I know the site plan calls for 1,000 square feet of second-story office space. We try to be as conservative as possible since parking is a basis of the office space with the employee count. In reality, we're probably gonna have much less than 1,000 square feet on the second story. What did we last talk about? Maybe 400 or 500 square feet?
Yes.
So that's the elevated tower type of look, and then for symmetry, we have one in the back too, just to break up the length of the building from the east side elevation. So, yeah, so that is the rendering.
So it'll all be glazed where can't really see in, but you can see out, is that what you mean? As far as the glass?
No, it'll be glass. All I meant is, during operating hours, this door will be up into the ceiling, and then there will be a high-speed vinyl type of door that can go up and down quickly to keep the noise and the heat from escaping, especially heat during the winter. So that's during operating hours, that one door will look different, but otherwise everything is as you see it.
Okay.
The outside of the building will look the same regardless of how large the office area ultimately is.
Correct, yes.
Thanks.
So I'm curious about the decision to remove that parallel stacking lane, which I understand have the escape route. That makes sense. It's probably a better term for an escape route, but a concern that the board had the last time you came was that the stacking might overflow onto Cornelia. Did this reduce the number of cars that can stack?
No, actually, Shalice, would you mind going back to maybe the C101 sheet? I believe previously
Sorry.
and I can look it up. I think we had around 18 spaces by utilizing stacking in here. But we did actually widen it a hair out front so that we made sure we had the 15 spaces, which is per the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
So, so did we lose a few from the original design? Yeah, I think we're at 18, but we did make some modifications to make sure we didn't lose too many by, eliminating, you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces in there. So it does slightly reduce that amount. But your zoning ordinance is one of the few I've worked with, and this is one of the sole uses where the ordinance defines the number of on-site stacking spaces for a car wash. So, as Rick mentioned earlier, a lot of this is you gotta put your imagination onto how this is gonna function and how it's gonna look. Well, your ordinance prescribes how it should function, and we need that. So, the fact that this site is so long and narrow really does lead itself well to having a long drive-in lane.
Any other questions at this point?
Well, my last one, this is my last question, is is it possible, or has anybody done this at a car wash, to encourage drivers to not idle their vehicles in line, to, stop and start, turn on, turn off as you go, to reduce emissions, to just post no idling signs?
Well, my Ford F-150 shuts off when I get
Or
to the stoplight, maybe
yeah.
only non-idling cars.
Yeah.
I don't know, I mean, in the industry is turn,
At a location like this, I think the cars are gonna cycle so quickly.
What's the time from?
About, we're looking at 45 seconds to a minute between cars. So if there were 15 cars stacked, the last one would be in the car wash, inside
Yeah,
the
and
entrance of the car wash in about 15 minutes.
yeah, it's a long time to idle a car. Okay.
All right. Anything else that you have, Mike?
No, I think that's everything I prepared.
Okay. Well, if we have no other questions at this point, I guess the next step is the public hearing for this item. And so I will open the public hearing. Anyone that would like to speak, you have 3 minutes.
Okay.
Just go up to the podium, please, and
Sure.
state your name.
Hi, I'm Trish Myhall. I live on Jennifer Drive, which is the dead-end street that's located behind where they're proposing to build the car wash. Ford used to have a building there, and they would intercom. You could hear that loud and clear. We were really glad when they tore that down. We didn't have to hear it anymore. And our biggest thing is we're worried about noise. We're worried about hearing the machinery going, about the radios going as the cars are sitting in the parking, to go in, and worried about listening to the employees shouting back and forth to each other. So that's probably our biggest concern, is the noise level. The other concern is that when you do get the stacking that goes out into the road, and I've gone by Eco Car Wash and it's the same thing. They've got, every once in a while, they do have cars that stack out onto Cornelia Street, and they've got a longer driveway to go to get into their car wash. When you come home, I work up further up Cornelia Street. So when I come home, I come down through that section of Cornelia Street where all the restaurants and stuff, and you do hit Wendy's and Taco Bell and
Starbucks where cars are waiting to get into the drive-through. And we're worried that people, if it's stacking there, that the runoff's of cars not wanting to wait behind everybody are going to come down Cogan Avenue and down Haley. And which is already an issue that we have with especially the Domino's pizza drivers that fly through to get and not go on Cornelia Street to avoid that traffic. And that's our other concern. That's really all I got.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Shalice, is there anyone online?
There's no one online.
Anyone else that would like to speak?
Is it possible I can just address the concern about the stacking of the issue, which is?
You are allowed to, yeah, you're allowed during public comment.
But you should close public hearing, I think, first. Is that
Well,
right?
are you, okay, I guess it wouldn't be public, so. And just so you know, during public comment, we take the comment, but we don't respond.
That's
So-
okay.
So
That's
that,
okay.
that's standard
As long as
practice,
I
just so you
can say
know.
what I want
Yep,
to say,
exactly.
I'm concerned with that.
Okay, so then we'll close the public hearing. Perry, if you'd like to. Sure. Go ahead.
I would just like to say, just address the concern you had about stacking on Cornelia Street. So I'm sure you've seen the Eco Car Wash during some of the days where they're probably washing 1,000 cars up there. Well, now you see the cars where they stack out onto Northern Pride Way, I guess. I've never seen them all the way out onto Cornelia Street, but now imagine people have a choice. They have another option. That line will probably be half the size it was. And that's what that's what we're hoping for, right? People are going to choose half the people might choose our car wash and not theirs. So I don't think I think we're going to alleviate some of the issues with people perhaps stacking. I've never seen them on Cornelia Street, but I think it's going to give the consumer an option. And it's going to alleviate if that is a problem. Thank you.
Yes.
Perry, to get back to the landscaping, the lady that just spoke, this is my hall. I think we were echoing each other's comments about, what kind of sound absorption. Obviously, evergreens are evergreen 12 months out of the year. That seems to be an ideal solution to noise. I think we should come up with some kind of understanding or agreement as to what we could do.
Right. We did send a study in, right, for the noise and the ambient noise in the area with the traffic. Is that something that we submitted?
So inside of the engineering report, we did measure on-site ambient noise levels. So we measured on-site ambient noise levels. And yeah, right there. So the readings on the project site, so I did it in 3 different areas. I did it out at the sidewalk area. So with cars going by, operating businesses and such in the area, the Eco Car Wash and Kodo, we had 74 to 78 decibels was the average reading. And then I stood midpoint in the property and the ambient levels were about 64 to 70 decibels. And then along the back fence line, it drops to 50 to 60 decibels. So then Perry's done some readings at his car wash and other car washes, and in front of the car wash exit, which of course is where the blowers are that blow out, you're looking at 77 to 79 decibels. So that falls right into that same range of the ambient level at the Cornelia Street sidewalk. And then towards the rear of the car wash, it drops down to 64 to 70 decibels, which currently is about the same range as the midpoint of the property itself. So even though there's gonna be some new sources of noise, it's gonna be consistent with that Route 3 corridor, you know. Kodo has, I couldn't even count all of the rooftop blower exhaust fans and makeup air fans and stuff. So there's, you know, different noise generators throughout that Route 3 corridor. So at the fence line itself, it should be fairly consistent to what it is today. Now, to Rick, your point of adding some cedars or spruce trees that'll help deaden that, it'll help to improve it along with the 10-foot fence. So I think, you know, hopefully it doesn't have any negative impacts towards the neighborhood to the south.
Is there anything that can be done on the interior of the building with panels or insulation also?
I mean, there is, the building will be insulated certainly, and that helps. The biggest thing is gonna be when the overhead doors open and the noise of the equipment inside. That's what the high-speed door, one of the functions of it in the front is. Perry, I forget, will the rear entrance have a high-speed door also? No, just the front side. But most of your noise is going out the front because that's where the blower is. So the building itself will help deaden some of the sounds. In terms of cars with their windows open and radios on, you know, I don't think there's much we could do about that.
You can sign it. I mean, you could turn your radio down signs,
Sure.
like a no wake zone.
Respect your neighborhood.
Respect your neighbor. I mean, I think that does something. I mean, it may help.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just say, I mean, you've got the busiest commercial corridor in northern New York State as Route 3 right there. And that's been there before any residential was built. I understand that and you knew that when you bought the house.
Absolutely.
So I think whatever you guys are willing to do, in my opinion, then that's a bonus, I think.
I mean, we want to be good neighbors.
Yeah.
That's our goal. We want to be good neighbors.
If I understand your charting correct, you've taken readings at the entry point of your existing car washes and the decibel levels are 64 to 69. And presently at the back of the lot, the decibel levels are 55 to 60 and midpoint 64 to 70. Am I understanding that correct?
Yes, correct.
The current lot, as it stands now, this is what
Yeah.
you're showing.
So these were all, I measured myself from the current lot. And then these were from his Market Street site and other car wash sites around the city. And keep in mind, when I say entry, I mean the rear of it, you know, where the car enters it, now you enter the site. So the way the noise calculations work is if you have a noise generator that's similar to the ambient level, it doesn't add to it. It essentially it's the difference between the two noise sources that then adds to the lower of the noise source. So based on that principle, the ambient noise levels around the site should be the same, especially off the site.
So if we're following the development of the site correctly, the mitigation measures of putting up a taller fence and then adding evergreens to absorb sound and further buffer, the decibel levels should reduce rather than increase.
Correct, especially on the other side of that fence. Yes. Yeah.
Worrying about the traffic, I don't even know if you guys would even people ask, can we put stop signs on Haley Avenue? To get cars to slow down?
He may be the man right there.
You would need to make a request to me, as the planner, I would be able to investigate that and make those recommendations to the council.
Okay.
So I can, after this, not to serve any more time, I can give you my contact information so you can reach out.
And whether they go in or not, it might be a good idea,
Yeah.
especially with the dominoes.
And we might as well evaluate it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, any more discussion on any of that right now? Then we have a seeker on this item. So I guess discussion on that or a motion to approve the seeker. Or wait, we've got to go through the.
We gotta do the
form.
secret.
Yeah.
Do you guys want to discuss it first, or would you prefer that I just go through this?
Go ahead.
So for anybody in the public watching, we will go through these questions. I will read them. If I do not hear a response from the planning board, I'm going to check no or small impact may occur. If there is something we want to discuss, then we'll stop and discuss. Will the proposed action create a material conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning regulations? Will the proposed action result in a change in the use or intensity of use of land? Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of the existing community? Will the proposed action have an impact on the environmental characteristics that cause the establishment of a critical environmental area? Will the proposed action result in an adverse change in the existing level of traffic or affect existing infrastructure for mass transit, biking, or walkway?
Can we pause for a second? So we don't have great data on this one, right? About changing the level of traffic. I feel like we've accommodated the sidewalk, which is great. We don't know much about traffic in this case. We meet the. Is there information that
I would say they meet what the zoning code requires for stacking. For, you know, the typical car wash, it's not like our code prescribes, here's an exact amount of, you know, usage, you know, per hour, and it fluctuates. The applicant brought up the point that between two competing firms, maybe choices could be different. Maybe it's the same person driving to one car wash and now uses the other. So it might not necessarily draw like new customers or new traffic. It might just be another outlet for the existing traffic. However, you know, as just the city, like as for the city side, yeah, we do not have that specific information. So it's up to the board to determine how you feel the information you do have in front of you.
It's a good point. My thought is if it were not on Route 3 and it were on a smaller side road, yeah, it would definitely be increasing traffic. But as far as the way I interpret it, I don't think we're increasing traffic.
So it's interesting because I don't think we're increasing the number of vehicles. It's the stacking problem with, and I get the logic that this might actually alleviate the stacking problem across the street, but it could also just create a new stacking problem going the other way on Cornelia. Doesn't seem like this warrants a traffic study, however.
I think the fact that it complies with the zoning ordinance is the only basis that we would have to argue against the stacking. And they made that presentation and was evaluated that it's compliant with zoning regulations, correct?
Yeah, and I think to Kurt's question of data, so that stretch of Cornelia Street averages 11,446 vehicles per day with a peak hourly flow of about 1,164 vehicles. So if Perry's Car Wash does 300 cars a day, it's not going to impact the traffic volume into the area. You know, I think that's the intent of the secret question is, to Derek's point, if we were around the corner on, you know, one of these side streets, now you're taking some of that 11,446 vehicles and bringing them onto a side street, which is inherently going to change the traffic of that street. But because this is Route 3 and has the highest traffic rate around, I don't think this project on this site affects that at all.
And that's how I see existing level of traffic is going. I know what you're saying with snacking. Yeah.
Go ahead, Schmitz.
So I'm sorry,
Okay.
because there was discussion on that, would the board like to take a vote on whether I check no or small or moderate to large? Or is there any, does?
Never had to,
board want
but
me
we can
select no?
take a poll.
Have you ever done that on secret?
Have we ever checked?
Is that how we
monitor
determine
board?
secret, like voting?
If there's discussion about it and
And
there's a
we-
question about it.
I mean, we are gonna vote on the secret in general.
Yeah.
At the end.
Yeah, sure.
So that could be where the vote comes in, but, I mean, the general,
Is there any more
The general-
discussion required at this point?
right,
Right.
does everyone feel okay with, I mean,
So I'll just proceed and check no or small impact.
I feel like that's where we're
Okay.
at, yeah.
Nobody objects to that. That's it. Will the proposed action cause an increase in the use of energy and it fails to incorporate reasonably available energy conservation or renewable energy opportunities? Will the proposed action impact existing public or private water supplies? Will the proposed action impact existing public or private wastewater treatment utilities?
Wait, sorry, can we pause on that one? Do we have a statement from Jonathan Ruff?
As part of the review comments from staff departments, we did not receive anything from
Was he asked to give us?
all departments. Yeah, were sent
Okay.
materials,
Okay.
and it's up to them to either
To
respond or not.
Okay.
So,
Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of important historic, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources? Will the proposed action result in an adverse change to natural resources, for example, wetlands, water bodies, groundwater, air quality, flora, and fauna? Will the proposed action result in an increase in the potential for erosion, flooding, or drainage problems? Will the proposed action create a hazard to environmental resources or human health? So having checked no on these, we will check.
Yep.
No. Derek, and I will complete the rest of this as well.
Okay. So we have a seeker with a negative declaration. Any more discussion on the seeker? If not, then do we have a motion to approve the seeker?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Rick,
I'll second that motion.
second by Rich. Any more discussion, or are you going to roll call again?
There can be more discussion after.
Any more discussion? Okay, roll call.
Rich Berger,
Yes.
Kurt Burbidge.
Yeah.
Derek Rosenbaum,
Yes,
Rick Perry.
Yes.
seeker motion carries, okay. Now, the next motion would be to adopt the resolution, which is 2021-12B, to approve the detailed plan with any conditions and related materials.
I think
So we can have more discussion now about that too.
yeah, with respect to conditions, I think I noted this correctly. We should add compliance with DPW regulations, specifically about the oil separator, just in coordination with DPW. I think I'd like to add a comment about working with Ethan and the Route 3 corridor, just so that what you do for sidewalks is consistent with, the city plans as they mature. And the other thing I'd like to add is the addition of evergreens to add to the buffering of any potential on-site noise that's generated. And I'm going to withdraw my statement about where the sidewalk should be located. Just because when Matt had mentioned that they're working on that, I think it'd be much more harmonious if we work with that specific location. makes sense.
Your comment, Rick, would also include, what was it called? Solids in addition to the oil separator. We talked about that. There are two things, right?
Yeah, and it's just, that's the standard that they
It's
presented.
already there.
We just want to make sure that it's consistent with,
Yeah.
any of the DPW regulations
Got it.
or wastewater treatment regulations.
Thank you.
I have a question for the applicant. If stacking becomes a problem, can you return to that second lane? What was going to be the parallel lane of entry and just modify that
I
design?
mean, we'll have people on site. So
Yeah.
If something, say there's a busy day and we need to use that lane.
Yeah.
We'll direct them into the other lane to be able to get through the base station. We absolutely could.
Yeah, and if it's that could become a permanent solution at some point if stacking becomes is routine.
I don't see it being.
Okay.
There may be a few days a year
Mhm.
that might be necessary. Wouldn't that be great for us?
Yep.
I guess. At this point, I don't see it being necessary. Like I said, I think we're gonna alleviate that issue that you feel with the power washing.
Yeah. But you have that space. I mean, that was the original plan, was a parallel entry tract and could potentially be used.
I would like to just make a comment. The zoning board's approval of their side yard setback was with the understanding that the second queue lane would be converted into an exit lane. So that variance that the zoning board did approve is conditional upon that. So I don't know if it's a temporary thing, how that applies to a variance, like if there's like a certain day of the year and needs to be done that way compared to a permanent change. That might, I believe that would trigger, having to probably go back to the zoning board and seeing what happens there, but
So
that was the condition.
what we're approving is based on what the zoning board has already set forth with their variance. But yeah, as far as using it if needed on a limited basis, just knowing that it's there without anything official saying that it's a second lane, I'm okay with that. Is that what
Yeah,
you're trying
as
to-
needed. Yeah, I mean,
I don't know if we need to make a condition. You're just asking
no.
questions,
I was
yeah.
just I'm just troubled by the possibility of
Right.
stacking, and that seems like there's some space there.
It's comforting to know it's there.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of what if.
Yeah.
I think it'll be a fast acting situation. It'll.
Yeah.
10 cars show up all at once. They're stacking behind the gate of 8. They comply. It's nothing that's going to be manageable. In 45 seconds, that guy's not going to run into
Yeah.
the road.
On the Margaret Street location, we process the cars out, one down on Margaret Street, about one every minute to minute and 20 seconds. We never stack more than 5 or 6 cars down there
Mhm.
routinely. Now, could there be an issue where, like Rick just said, all of a sudden 6, 8 cars pulling at one time, it happens, they clear up so fast.
Yeah.
That our plan is to do about double what we're doing downtown, uptown, so we're looking to do, if we're washing 20,000 cars a year downtown, we're looking to do 40,000 cars a year, that's our prediction.
Okay.
So 15 cars stacked in line is for a lot of cars.
Yeah.
Consistently anyways.
And that's, correct me if I'm wrong, but the same standard that we apply to the drive-in lane at Dunkin' Donuts is the same standard that they're complying with for the stacking of drive-through business.
Wendy's periodically has a problem at that intersection, and if
Yes.
Chick-fil-A had a different entrance, it would be a major problem, right? And I just don't want us to be in a position. This is a good use of this site, and the site works well. I get all that. I just don't want to be in a position in 2 years where we have created a problem on the busiest route in town.
I think the fact that the city has a standard of acceptability for stacking, I don't think we can deviate from the standard and impose anything other.
No, I'm looking for mitigation measures, like,
Yeah. I would say then the mitigation measure would be to request that the council change from 15 to 18. You know, that's not in front of us. Code compliance is what, you know, they sought out to do, and, you know, site deviation
Yeah.
is what we're
Yeah.
working on. But in all reality, they comply with the regulation
Yeah.
that zoning established, and
Yeah.
I don't see where we can change that.
Yeah.
Now, I do agree with you in the future, if we see, maybe not on this site, but if we see 15 vehicles as an inadequate number for stacking, then we should make that recommendation.
Yeah,
But today they comply.
right, and yeah, I don't need to say anything more.
Yeah,
There's space on the site to accommodate vehicles if it
Yeah.
becomes a problem that, you know, changing the ordinance for the next car wash doesn't alleviate stacking from this
Yeah.
project if it happens in the future, but I'm comfortable with the space that's on the site.
Yeah. I don't know the research that went into, you know, the acceptability of the numeric.
Right, why it's 15 and not 25
Yeah, I
or
don't know.
14, or yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
They do have a bit of a contingency in this case.
Yes, which is good. And
Right.
I've known Perry Buck for a long time, and he's a very credible, honest man. And if you ever had an issue with his noise, he's the type of person that will address it. Getting hot again.
Okay, so any further discussion? If not, then entertain a motion to adopt this resolution.
Make a motion to adopt resolution number 2021-15B.
Well,
Pardon me?
Well-
I grabbed the wrong one.
yeah,
Sorry.
moved around.
Let me modify that. Retract that.
Well-
And I'd like to make a resolution to approve, or I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution 2021-12B.
Have any conditions with that? Conditions with that?
As outlined in the discussion.
Yeah.
The
Complying
noise
with
abatement.
Complying
associated
with
with the
DPW.
evergreen trees.
Right.
Is there anything else?
Working with community development to ensure the pedestrian access routes are developed consistent with both the plan and previous site developments to safe passage. We good with that?
So we got DPW with the oil water separation.
Grit separator.
That's already included in what they proposed. It was just the additional DPW. The sidewalks consistent with the city comp plan as those change. Then adding vegetation, fence, we always cancel. For specific trees or shrubs or
Yeah. I would probably use the language of increasing on-site offering with so evergreens or tree or plant. Sure that noise transmission.
so that's the motion with conditions. Second by Rick. Any further discussion?
Rick Rubich,
Yes.
Rick Rosenberg,
Yes.
Rick Perry,
Yes.
Rick Aaron.
Yes.
Motion carries. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So we're
Oh, I just read the 21. I just read the 20.
Okay. You grab the rules.
Yeah, yeah. Really?
All right, so nothing under other business. If there's nothing else,
I will make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it if I'm allowed to. Okay,
Have a good evening,
all in
everybody.
favor?
Thank you.
Aye.